Welcome participants. The resource person for this session is Dr. Gurleen Ahuluwalia, an assistant professor at Punjabi University's Constituent College. She is passionate English language teacher who believes in using student-centered approaches to hone the linguistic competence of her students. In tandem with her contribution to the teacher training program, ELT journals and books, she is trained and certified by the British Council India as a language assessor for international English language proficiency tests. The lecture is designed to underscore the pedagogical significance and implication of fostering creativity in education. The PowerPoint presentation is divided into 4 parts and is well seasoned with video clips and illustrations to put forth the idea. So let us join her.
Me and I'll forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I will understand. Good morning everyone. My name is Gurleen Ahuluwalia and I teach English and communication skills at a Constituent College of Punjabi University Patiala, that is University College Kannauр. I've taken this proverb as a preface to my today's presentation on the topic fostering creativity into teaching. Before we proceed to talk about what creativity is and how it can be incorporated into our teaching, our curriculum to instill confidence in our students, I'd like you to watch this short video clip in the next slide.
एक दिन हमारे गांव में किसी ने नहाने का सावर रख दिया। शहर वाले का नहाना अभी खत्म ना हुआ।
Hope you enjoyed the video. As we can see in this particular social advertisement titled The Shower, that this particular video has been directed to bring our attention to one of the most important global and environmental issue of water conservation, and I think it does its job in a very effective manner and in a very persuasive way too. And no wonder that this advertisement has won applause and appreciation by the critics not only in India but across the world. Instead of stating their message explicitly to save water, I think this advertisement has used lots and lots of creative ways to impact our senses. It evokes our emotion. Rather, it urges us to think about saving water and demands our heart to immediately take action to do so. So I feel that this advertisement, all in all, succeeds in engaging us, succeeds in involving us by presenting a valuable idea in a simple yet an innovative and interesting way. Dear friends, perhaps this is how I define creativity. For me, using imaginative approaches, though simple, to make your lessons effective and interesting perhaps is the best way to use creativity. In this particular presentation, I'd like to talk to you about what is creativity, what is the importance of adding creativity in teaching, what are some innovative ways which we can use in our classroom to promote creativity amongst our students, and how the use of education technology in particular can be very helpful for us in fostering creativity amongst the students. So what creativity is? If we go by the definitions given by educationists to us, they define creativity as a cluster of skills that are needed to produce ideas which are both original and valuable. A committee organized in the US in 1999 gave the definition of teaching creatively as teachers using imaginative approaches to make their learning more interesting, exciting, and effective. And perhaps this is one of the fundamentally essential building block for 21st century learners is instilling creativity in them to make them workplace ready for the coming generation in their upcoming days. As we can notice in a survey conducted by IBM, where over 1,500 executives of top multinational companies value creativity as the most crucial business skill in the modern world. Hence, to fulfill the market demand, where knowledge economy dominates, where rote tasks are completed by machines, we have computers to do that, and almost all information is available with just one click of the mouse. There, our responsibility increases because we have to prepare students for the 4 C's to achieve their goals in the contemporary digital world. And what those 4 C's are: communication, collaboration, critical, and perhaps the most important one is to instill creativity in them, to make them creative, to let them have innovative ideas to solve the problems at their workplaces and in their lives too. Even the Bloom's taxonomy gives precedence to creativity over all other learning objectives that educators set for their students, as we can see in the current slide, where creativity is placed at the top of the pyramid. Now the next question that comes to us is importance of adding creativity in teaching. So here we say that the essence of good teaching, perhaps I believe, is to learn to watch the students, to learn to read their interests, their attention, their engagement, and to know when to move on and when to stay. And all this I hope we can do by watching them, by monitoring what they're doing, trying as best as we can to see the learning in their faces, in their behavior, and hence, of course, in their personalities later on. So what Alfred North Whitehead says is that we need to overcome inert knowledge problem in our students. What this term inert knowledge problem is, it's a term that was coined by a famous mathematician and philosopher in 1929, Alfred North Whitehead. He said inert knowledge problem is a problem where students learn things in the classroom that they cannot later put to their own purposes outside of the classroom. For example, if I take the example of my own subject, we teach grammar to the students, and I believe that students keep on learning grammar throughout their academic career. They start learning from class 1, and they keep on learning till the end of their graduation. But even then, they could not have a good command on their language. So where exactly the problem lies? I think this is what they suffer from, inert knowledge problem, because we teach grammar to them in a very static manner. We teach students the rules. We make them read the rules. We make them memorize them. And we make them apply them to some particular exercises, instead of providing them with an opportunity to use those grammar structures that they have learned in their classroom in meaningful and engaging activities, so that they learn to use those grammatical structures in the real context, in their lives. Number 2, we need to add creativity in teaching to increase their level of motivation. Friends, we all know that motivation fuels creativity. So when our students are motivated in the classroom, they would like to perform well. They do well in the classroom. They become creative. It also helps to deepen their understanding of the concepts that are being taught in the classroom. So instead of memorizing, they'll try to understand, which of course brings joy to them and instills confidence in them, because they know they can do it. They can solve the problems related to this particular concept in their real life situations as well. What other educationists and people from different fields or experts from different fields have to say about creativity? Let's see. So Lubert T. and R. Sternberg, they conducted a research in 1996. And what do they say? They say that when students are taught creatively and their achievements are assessed in a way that values their creative abilities, their academic performance certainly improves. That was what educationists have to say about it. Let us see what a psychologist has to say about it. So Jean Piaget, a Swiss psychologist, he worked on cognitive psychology. He said the principal goal of education should be to create people who are capable of doing new things, not simply of repeating what other generations have done. We have to produce people who are creative, inventive, and discoverers. Now I'd like you to see what a neurobiologist has to say about it. So here comes Professor Dr. Martha Burns. He says that a big part of the answer to why some of our students hold on to the information we teach, it has to do something with dopamine. Dopamine, I hope the word is not new to us. Somewhere in our biology class, we all have heard of this chemical. It's a kind of neurotransmitter that helps in transmitting information in our body. So it's a chemical in the brain that has to be present for someone to retain the information. And how we can increase the level of dopamine in our brain? That's by making the information new and exciting. So friends, the takeaway from all these definitions is that if we make our teaching new and exciting, of course the students will develop the ability to retain the information for a longer time. The information will go into their long-term memory. So this you can see the picture of happy brain chemicals, in which dopamine, of course, plays a very, very important role. Now let's talk about what we can do to develop creativity in our classroom. As the quote says, the famous quote says, that a good teacher can inspire hope, ignite the imagination, and instill a love of learning. So dear friends, let us see what should be the role of a teacher. Well, there is a paradigm shift. If the shift has not taken place yet, then it's a high time that we need to bring this shift in our classrooms, and it'll start from the teacher. So the teacher, whose role since times immemorial, it's considered to be the role of a sage on a stage, but the time has come to make a shift here. Now a teacher is not a knowledge transmitter, rather a teacher is a guide on the side who's guiding the student as a facilitator. The time has come for the teacher to become a mentor of the student. So how this can be accomplished in the classroom, for that, for me, the first and the foremost thing is to establish rapport with the students. Establishing rapport with the student is very, very important, as it builds trust between students and the teacher. It incites confidence in them and allows them for a fun learning environment. So before we embark on a creative journey, friends, we need to establish rapport with our students. Once we have established what our main target is, we should take into consideration once we have established rapport with the students, we should be clear about what our motives are. What are the objectives of our teaching, and what are the learning objectives of the students? Why is it that we would like to achieve? What is it that we would like to achieve through more imaginative teaching approaches? Why there is a need to bring change in the approaches that we use in our classroom? For example, remember I talked of teaching grammar to the students? Why I believe that students, though they have been learning, they keep learning grammar throughout their lives, but the result, the output is not up to the mark, is not the one that is expected out of them. Perhaps somewhere it lies in the approach that we make use of, the teaching methodology that we make use of in the classroom. For example, we make use of grammar translation method. No doubt, grammar translation method has its own benefits, but the time has come to use communicative approaches in the classroom so that they become better communicators, so that they know how to read, how to write, how to present themselves in front of public. So it's very, very important to have a clear objective. So maybe we want to inject more life into our course books, into our lessons by using these kind of creative approaches in the classrooms. Maybe we are looking for some ways to make language more memorable for them. So we have to decide what the objective is. And next, of course, again, very, very important aspect is, which should be taken into consideration, that what kind of state of mind is conducive to creativity. There's no doubt that being able to silence our internal critic, our own mind, which keeps on telling us time and again that, this is not going to work. I've never been creative anyway. The students won't like it. This is silly. I know nothing is more annoying than hearing this little voice inside us that repeated these kinds of negative phrases time and again. And it hijacks our brain. It does not let us, set off on the journey of creative process. It slows down our performance considerably. And in some extreme cases, rather, it makes it impossible for us to come up with the original thought. But we need to acknowledge the fact that this negativity comes from stepping into unknown territory. Let it come, but we have to learn to get rid of it as quickly as possible. We have to subdue this fear of failure. This is very, very important. Why don't we like to try new things in our class? Why don't we, experiment in our class? Because we have a fear. We have a fear of failure. Doesn't matter, dear friends. whenever you want to try something new, believe me, have confidence in yourself and you may succeed. And so what if at one step or the other we've not? We too are learners and we keep on learning throughout our lives. And this, experience would teach us something new. So in the process of, using creativity in our classrooms, I think we can become from a novice teacher to a mature teacher. We too, walk on this journey. We too set off on this journey of learning and teaching, where we, of course, will have to move out of our comfort zones. We'll have to learn to take risks. We'll have to push ourselves out of the comfort zone. And by pushing ourselves, we'll put ourselves first into that, fearful zone where our mind will keep on reminding us that you are not going to do well and you lack self-confidence. But you don't have to give up at that time. You don't have to quit. But you have to tell yourself that you can do it. You'll have to keep all those thumbs up positive approaches with you. And you have to take yourself into the learning zone. You have to learn to deal with challenges and problems. And in this way, you'll acquire many, many new skills. You'll extend your comfort zone. And hence, you'll grow as a mature teacher. And you'll, tread on the path of being an expert in the field. Now, what kind of classroom environment should be there when we start using these kinds of new methods in our teaching, when we start thinking out of the box, when we want something new, something novel to happen in our classrooms? The first and the most important thing, as Fairweather and Cramond said in their research in 2010, to create a compassionate and accepting environment, because creativity requires a safe environment in the students where, they have the liberty to exercise autonomy and they have the freedom to take risks. So they need to feel safe from being ridiculed in the classroom. They have to be accepted for who they are. And we have to develop faith in them by establishing rapport with them, that they have to take risks. They learn to take risks. And for this, we have to free them from excessive pressure. Doesn't matter if they could not perform in one go. We don't have to pressurize them. We have to give them time. So how we can achieve these kind of psychological safety for our students? What kind of measures do we need to take in our classrooms for the students to achieve this level of, rapport with the teacher? Number one is we have to accept and value their contributions. We have to focus on cooperation, not on competition. We have to limit time constraints. Some students may take a little longer. Let them walk with their own pace. Let us not ask them to hurry up. And we have to constrain punitive evaluation, because that does not work in creative environments. Next is we have to create an atmosphere of respect by not at all tolerating taunting, name-calling, bullying, and put-downs, which generally happens amongst peers in the classrooms. So, as a teacher, we need to take care of all these, important points to establish a very safe environment for the students. So, how we can introduce, how we can incorporate and foster creativity in the classroom? What are those innovative ways that we can make use of? We know that textbooks and timeless lesson plans, they are, a great staple in our toolkit. But introducing more unconventional learning materials can help our students think out of the box, and it'll help in engaging them with the lesson. So let us see what those unconventional learning methods and materials can be. TED Talks. So I believe, that technology is a platform that allows our students to engage in meaningful creative activities and helps them to explore their potential. So one such platform that we can make use of in our classrooms is TED Talks, using TED Talks. We know that leaders and role models, they always play an important role. The celebrities, other role models. Students generally feel fascinated. They get highly influenced by their personalities, by their performances on the stage. So I think that bringing them to your classroom, into your curriculum, perhaps is one of the best ways to engage your students into your lessons. On the TED website, if you visit, I've given the link here. If you click on the link, this link will take you to the TED website, where you'll find thousands of websites on a range of topics. So we can select the topic of our choice, suitable to our classroom teaching or topic of our subject, and we can use it for our students. Even there are some kind of prepared lessons also. If you go to TED Education, then some kind of ready-made lessons are also there available for the students. Podcasts. I hope the word is not new for us. Think of just about any subject or topic, and chances are there that you'll get a podcast covering it. So, as a starting point, browse through this list of 50 educational podcasts that I've given the link of. They are filled with ideas and inspiration for lesson plans. And these podcasts, along with giving information on the topic of your subject, they also help in developing listening skills to the students, because when they listen to these podcasts, they will get acquainted with the accent of different kinds of English, which will help them in developing their language skills as well. Yes, now we come to other innovative lessons. Here, I'd like to talk in detail about education technology, which I believe not only promotes motivation, increases involvement, but also gives a sense of ownership to the students and increases learner autonomy, especially when we are making use of Web 2.0 tools. Yes, Web 2.0 tools. N number of free websites are available which offer Web 2.0 tools to the students. I've given a link. It's a link by a very famous educationist who work on education technology. He gives us the list of lots of education tools, technological tools that we can make use of in our classrooms. He gives a review on them, and sometimes he gives us tutorials also in a very simple way how we can make use of these tools in our classrooms. So there are many educational tools that are available for us to use in the classrooms. I'll not be able to talk many of them because of the time constraint, but yes, I'd like to talk about some of the tools here. So I believe, for me, a thoughtful integration of, face-to-face learning in the classroom along with online learning experience offers a wonderful learning experience to the student, especially to the students of this generation who are digital natives. Perhaps we are digital immigrants who have to, learn a lot of things to become techno-savvy. But I think they are born with this quality. This generation is born with this ability. And if we keep on teaching them all the time in a traditional way, they rather get bored with it. we could not develop their interest in our classrooms. So education technology, I think, can play a very, very important, a very, very vital role in this. So here I'm going to present you with a scenario and with one important Web 2.0 tool that you can make use of in your classroom. So here we go.
Mr. Wilson is a middle school teacher who wants to change the way students learn about the U.S. Constitution. In the past, he had his students simply memorize facts. Now, Mr. Wilson wants to try something new, and the timing is right. His social studies department head has been encouraging teachers to use more creative instructional strategies. Mr. Wilson is aware that some teachers in his department are ahead of the curve, and his colleague, Miss Vasquez, is one of them.
Hi, Miss Vasquez. Do you have a few minutes to spare? I have a question.
Sure. What's going on?
You know how the department head has always been pushing for student-centered instructional strategies? Well, I bet there's something I can do to improve the way students learn about the U.S. Constitution in my class.
How have you been teaching about the Constitution?
Pretty much by memorizing facts. The results are kind of hit and miss, and the students don't develop much enthusiasm. Quite frankly, I'm not even sure that those students who do well on the exams have a very deep understanding of what they've memorized.
Well, memorizing can be a useful way to remember some material, but I agree. If the students don't really understand basic concepts, memorizing alone leads to a pretty shallow kind of learning. What ideas do you have for doing something different?
Well, for one thing, I'd like them to work together. In the process, I also want them to demonstrate a deeper understanding of the concepts in the Constitution. The best I've come up with so far is having them produce a newspaper or magazine. Maybe they could use their writing to explain the Constitution to new citizens. And of course, they could create their newspaper or magazine online. Any ideas?
First of all, I really like your plans. And yes, there are lots of technological tools your students can use. Creating a multimedia magazine is so easy. There are a number of good options, but my favorite is simple booklet. Students select a layout template and then they can add text, images, audio files, videos, and links to each page. I'm sure your students will be actively engaged in the process and have some fun too.
Great! Can you help me get started?
Mr. Wilson is a
So that was one of the Web 2.0 tools that we have just seen. Coming over to the next one is Padlet. It's an online virtual bulletin board, a kind of notice board that we have in our schools and colleges. So on Padlet, teachers and students can collaborate, they can reflect, they can share links and pictures in a very, very secure location. Actually, it's a kind of virtual wall on which you can paste whatever kind of material you want to. You want your students to get an access to. For example, okay, let me give you an example. On this particular current slide, you can see a web link. I've given this because this link will take you to the guide where you can understand how you can set up your own Padlet, that is your own virtual wall for your classrooms, and what are the various ways in which you can make use of Padlet for that. I'm going to talk about one of the important uses that I generally make use of Padlet in my classroom or for my students. So in the next slide, let us see how do I use Padlet. I've given a link. You can go to my Padlet. So this, I've created Padlet for all the classrooms as I teach BA students also. I teach BCA also. I teach BCom also. Though my, BA students do not have much access to the internet and they sometimes don't like to even watch. But yes, my literature students are quite good at that. They are quite inquisitive. They are intrigued by what I'm trying to teach them through these kinds of technological tools. So they do visit. And BCA students, they are certainly, of course, techno-savvy. They are more interested in using these kind of tools. So I'm going to show you one of the Padlets that I've created for my BCA classroom. So in BCA third year, I'm supposed to teach plays to them. There's a book of one-act plays in which I'm supposed to teach certain plays. So here I'm going to take example of one of the plays, which is Riders to the Sea. So what I do, how I use Padlet for my BCA third classroom. So you can see Riders on the Sea on this particular picture, on the screenshot of the Padlet. So I click on this Riders of the Sea. It'll take my students here to this particular page, to this particular, virtual wall, where before coming to the class, my students get an information about the author. I do not post it all together. For example, I'm going to start teaching a play to my students the other day. So 1 or 2 days before, I just put information about the author. For example, the author for this particular play is J.M. Singe. So I paste its picture and I'll give some of the information about him. I mean, a short biography about the author. So we discuss all this in the classroom the other day. And next day, when we have to start reading the play, prior to that, I post the video of the play. For example, part 1, this play is divided into 5 parts. So part 1, if I'm doing the other day, I post the text of the play because some of the students don't have access to the books. So I, post on this particular wall, I upload the part 1 of the play, the text of the part 1 and the video of the part 1. So before coming to the class, it is imperative for my students to visit these 2 websites, to see the play, to read the play, so that I can get enough time in my class to discuss other important issues, other important concepts. For example, what kind of literary devices have been used in the text, in the play. So I get enough time to discuss the characters. I get enough time to discuss the settings, to discuss the atmosphere. So there are so many things that we can discuss in the classroom. So instead of wasting time entirely on reading the text, I try to create interest of my students in my particular classroom by engaging them, by watching them videos about it and reading about the text. And then we discuss in the class. And believe me, it works. It really works. Some of the students who are shy, reticent, don't talk about it, when I ask them to post their comments on the wall, they do so, which really gives happiness to you. So this is one of the ideas of using Padlet. Coming next is blog. Blog, again, is one of the wonderful ways, and now the term is not new to us. We see that there are so many bloggers these days who update us on various kinds of topics, various kinds of issues. So if you want to see how I made use of blogs in my classroom, so you can visit this website. It gives, it'll take you to an article in a Scopus indexed journal where I have given the data, I've given the results of how I made use of blogs with my students. So blogs, for me, I think, they are highly motivating to students, especially those who otherwise might not become, participants in classrooms. It gives an excellent opportunity to them to read and write. For example, how I made use of blog in my classroom, I used to teach in a professional college, in a technical college, in an engineering college before joining Constituent College of Punjabi University. There, because the students are, highly techno-savvy, so it was not at all difficult for me to use blogs for them. In the very first lecture, I gave them a tutorial. I guided them how to create their own blogs. They created the same. So as a part of their practical, they are supposed to maintain a practical file. So I, being an English teacher, told them not to maintain the practical file, the physical practical file, but to maintain the practical file on the blog. So I asked them to create a blog, post whatever they do in the classroom on the blog, which made it really, really very interesting. For example, as I told them what a group discussion is in my theory classroom. So in the practical class, they actually performed the group discussion in a topic. So when it comes to write about that group discussion, so instead of writing, they made a video of their discussion and they posted it there. Then I asked all the group members to put their comments on that. Then other students also gave their comments and I also gave my comments. So this way it gave them opportunities to read and write. Similarly, they conducted surveys, then they posted their survey reports on that. And even for conducting surveys, we used another Web 2.0 tool called surveymonkey.com. So there are so many tools that we can make use of to make our teaching interesting, to make our students feel interested in our classrooms. So there are other, blogs provides effective forums for collaboration, for discussion, and even it gives mentoring to the students. Coming to the other ways in which we can encourage creativity in our classrooms, I believe using colors. Encourage your students to use more and more colors because they have an incredibly powerful impact on the students. They aid students with absorbing information and learning new content. Even I make use of 4 kinds of color pens when I'm teaching on whiteboard with marker to my students. For example, if I'm teaching, say, any kind of parts of speech to them. For example, I've written a sentence, Sachin Tendulkar is a famous player, is a famous cricketer. So if I'm asking my students, if I want them to pay more attention to the nouns I'm making use of, so I'll make use of red colored pen to circle Sachin Tendulkar, and I'll make use of green color pen to circle cricketer, because Sachin Tendulkar is a proper noun, cricketer is a common noun. So I make use of these kinds of colors which help them in understanding the concept certainly in a better way. And you'll be surprised how quickly they start absorbing new information. I even encourage them to make their notes using different kinds of colors, as you can see in the picture here. Yeah. So next way that I make use of for my students is to use discussions in the classroom. Discussions get students think more critically about the material. So here I've given some important, meaningful conversations for them to aid them to start their discussion, because initially they don't come up with that. But when you give them these kind of phrases, they really get motivated. They also want to present their ideas using these helpful conversation ways. And believe me, if you discuss in the class, it gives them a challenge to listen to other students' opinions. It desires them to think critically about their contributions and ideas. And these kind of discussions in the classrooms give them the opportunity to challenge each other intelligently and build off of each other's ideas. So generally, once a week, I take 10 minutes before the end of the session or before the end of my class to discuss what we've been doing in the previous chapter and so on and on. So there are many ways in which we can promote discussions in the classrooms. Next, a very important way to make your students feel comfortable in the class is to incorporate humor. Not silly jokes, but yes, witty humor certainly plays a very, very important role. It creates a positive environment, I think, in which creativity can flourish. So it is very important to create that comfortable, positive environment of your classroom, because when students smile, when they laugh, their tense muscles get relaxed and they feel like participating. So I've given one example, which is my favorite. I generally make use of it when I teach writing skills to my students, when I teach punctuation, use of punctuation to them. So let's eat grandma. My God, how can we eat grandma? So using correct way of punctuation in the classroom. For example, correct punctuation marks in your writing can really help you to have persuasive writings, correct writing as given in the second sentence. So let's eat, grandma. That's of course is the better way. So we can make use of humor in our classrooms for effective learning. Next is introducing games. I really believe in introducing games in the classrooms. There are many kind of language learning games that I make use of in my own language teaching activities. For example, you can see here my favorite one is Noughts and Crosses. Zero Kati, you remember that we generally used to play in our childhood days, and it's a favorite of almost all the students. So when I'm teaching different kinds of parts of speeches to my students, when I'm teaching different types of nouns to them, when I'm teaching n number of things, I make use of noughts and crosses. I divide the class into 2 teams, then we play noughts and crosses. It's great fun. And there are many kind of jigsaw puzzles that I can make use of, but yes, with some group of students, and I do use that. And there are some kind of these kinds of crosswords that we can make use of in our classroom. So games play a very, very important role. They are great fun for our students. Last but of course not the least, rather one of the very, very important activity is team building exercise. Why it is important? Because we have to make our students learn cooperation, which is going to help them throughout their lives. So the most important thing about team building exercises is that there isn't anything right or wrong. We just need to use the strategies to come up with a solution. So cooperative exercises allow students to work together to make decisions based on creative thinking, communication and collaboration. And I think throughout the process, students build better relationships with other team members as they struggle, they deal with the failure and eventually work to master the problem being presented to them. So that's all for today's presentation. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope I have inspired you to use creativity in your classroom. So before I wrap up my presentation, I'd like to express my thanks to the Dashmesh Khalsa College, the principal of the college, the staff of the college, especially Madam Harpreet, for giving me this golden opportunity to present my ideas on this topic of great relevance these days. Thank you, everybody.